Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A very good evening to all of you. It's a great pleasure to have this opportunity to share some thoughts with you. Thank you, Sir Richard Dalton, for your gracious introduction. I'm pleased to be able to engage. I cannot continue without saying that it's interesting that I'm in Chatham House, but Chatham House rules don't apply here. Anywhere we go, we say Chatham House rules, and now we have something on the record. Let me just try to put in perspective how we believe a change in approach may be able to address our problems in the region. We tested it once and it worked. Maybe it can work again. And let me preface that by simply saying that we live in a different international environment. An international environment that we so readily call globalized world. But we never seriously think about what it means that we live in a globalized world. From my perspective, living in a globalized world means that we can no longer enjoy benefits while others are suffering. As we cannot build a long and tall wall around our country so that we can protect our environment, where everybody else is producing greenhouse gases and warming the atmosphere. We cannot live in a prosperous situation when our neighbors are dying of poverty, and we cannot live in security where everybody else is insecure. If anything, 9/11, September 11th, proved that even the greatest power on the face of the earth cannot guarantee the security of its citizens if insecurity prevails and persists elsewhere in the world. I think that's an important consideration that we should all have, that we either live in security together or perish in insecurity together. And if we go beyond simply making a proclamation about globalized goods and globalized threats, and accept that as a change of paradigm, and then define problems with this new perspective, rather than the old so-called zero-sum perspective, then we have opened the road to a resolution. I think we did that in the nuclear case, albeit reluctantly, and albeit after having tried all the wrong options. Finally, we made ourselves believe that we needed to redefine the question. For the past, since 2002, when the Iranian nuclear issue became an international concern, we've been trying to resolve the problem. But Iran insisted on its rights, so we wanted to have a full enrichment program. And the West wanted zero enrichment. The United States, President Obama said it very honestly, that had it been his wish, if he could exercise his wish, he would have removed every nut and bolt in Iranian nuclear program. So that was the wish. And our wish was to have a peaceful but unlimited enrichment program. The outcome was we went for a zero-sum game. When we started these negotiations, and I was a part of the original negotiations which failed in 2005, when we started the process, Iran had less than 200 working centrifuges. Zero centrifuge option gave the United States and the West 20,000 centrifuges. And when we started this process, we had a +7 growth. We ended up in -6.8. Everybody lost. That is what we gain if we try to gain at the cost of the other side, at the expense of the other side. We then started, I take a bit of credit for having proposed that we need to start defining our problem as a common problem. We did that in New York in 2013, in September, in a meeting, when we decided to consider the Iranian nuclear problem as a joint effort, not as an effort between two rivals. And at the end of the day, we were able to address something that people believed was intractable, something that people believed could never be resolved without a war. Unfortunately, some still do. Some still believe that this is not a resolution that they like to see, because their mindset is so basically dogmatically focused on win-lose. So they cannot see the possibility that you can have an outcome in which nobody loses, in which everybody can claim a victory. Sometimes people ask the question, why everybody is celebrating? If they are celebrating, we should be mourning. That comes from that mentality, a win-lose, zero-sum mentality, that if there is something that the other side can in fact be happy about, we must be worried about it. But we made it. We made it work. We made it possible. We implemented it. Very few people believed that it would be implemented on both sides. Very few Iranians believed that sanctions would be removed. At least they have been removed on paper. I hope they will be removed in practice too. It may take some time. Ours was easier. The IAEA has verified it. But I think it is a good investment. If we see this in a zero-sum perspective, it will not be a lasting solution. If we see this in a positive-sum perspective, then any effort that is put by the United States in complying with its commitments, even though it may not derive immediate economic benefits from it, is an insurance policy for the agreement. And if they see it in that way, it will again become a mutually gainful exercise rather than a lose-win situation. Now, we had hoped that the new paradigm could also apply to our region. And we still believe that particularly the situation in Syria and in Yemen and in Iraq and in Bahrain and in Lebanon can be viewed from a positive-sum paradigm, from a win-win scenario. Because we've tried the lose-lose scenario. And hundreds of thousands of people have died or become homeless or are coming to Europe as refugees, in addition to the neighboring countries. 5 million are internally displaced. In Yemen, 11 months, almost 11 months of senseless bombardment has produced almost no result, except for aggravation of animosity and hate. Is it possible to look at it from a non-zero-sum perspective? Is it possible for us to seek accommodation rather than exclusion? We believe that our interest in the region is not contradictory to the interests of other regional powers. I mean Saudi Arabia. We do not believe that Iran and Saudi Arabia necessarily need to define their interest in the region as mutually exclusive, unless we decide to do so ourselves. That's a fault for which we can only blame ourselves. If we define the situation in the region, if we define our interest in the region, which in my view is unfortunately the case for Saudi Arabia, that the interest of Saudi Arabia is for Iran not to be an active participant in this region, then you cannot have accommodation, because that's a zero-sum perspective. But if you have serious interests, there are a lot of negatives, unfortunately, that can bind us together right now. I believe ISIS, as much as some may consider it a bargaining chip, unfortunately, a leverage, is a disastrous enemy for everybody. That is something that can unite us all. At least an enemy that we can all see our interest in trying to contain and to hopefully eradicate soon, which is not going to be easy. There are a lot of other possibilities. I have written for many years about a security and cooperation arrangement in the Persian Gulf area. Common principles that can bind us. We all need free flow of oil, freedom of navigation in the Persian Gulf. That's a common good that binds us together. We all need security in the region. We all need prosperity in the region. Even coming to technical issues, Persian Gulf, both on the northern shores as well as on the southern shores, is coming up with a huge number of nuclear reactors. Nuclear safety can be something that can bind us together. We can all redefine the problem, redefine the paradigm, and look at this from a positive sum perspective. And then you can see that issues, problems that seem to be impossible, hurdles that we thought were insurmountable, will become possible targets for collective achievement. And I think that change of paradigm, which is a necessity, it's a necessity for our global community. We need to understand that although people may differ, but we can resolve difficult issues through diplomacy. And we did. With 37 years of baggage between Iran and the United States, we were able to at least resolve this particular issue, which was probably keeping the two sides in a confrontational situation, which had the possibility of getting even worse. If we could resolve that with a country that we have been estranged from for 37 years, we can certainly resolve it with people we call brothers and sisters. And I think that will only require us to change our perspective, to change our paradigm. And I believe that is doable, and we in Iran are prepared to do it sooner, better than later. Thank you.